What is up, guys? Delboy here. So Kell Brook defeats Michael Zerafa in a WBA super welterweight final eliminator. I've got to say, I wasn't really impressed with Kell Brook in this fight. Historically, I've always been a big believer in Kell Brook. I've always rated his ability, but tonight, to me, he looked off the pace. Whether that is because of his age and he's past his best, or whether he couldn't really get up for this level of opponent, I'm not sure. But regardless of reason, he didn't look good in this fight as far as I'm concerned. In the first round, he looked okay. He landed some good flashy jabs, some good hard right hands, and in the first round, it looked like Kell Brook would get Michael Zerafa out of there in a few rounds. But after the first round, to me, Kell Brook, he looked really workmanlike. To me, he looked content to outbox Michael Zerafa to a 12-round decision, and he never really stepped through the gears like I thought he would do. And not only that, he got caught with a lot of silly shots in this fight. Like I said, first round, for me, Kell Brook looked quite good, landed some good hard jabs, some good hard right hands, and, in the first round, it looked like Kell Brook of old. Good timing, good precision, good accuracy. Kell Brook looked quite good, but after the first round, that went out of a window, and Kell Brook was just content to outbox Michael Zerafa. And that is fine and dandy if you're not getting hit, but Kell Brook in this fight got caught with several right hands down the pipe, straight right hands from Michael Zerafa, and they was catching Kell Brook flush. You wonder what would happen if Kell Brook was fighting an elite level fighter, because that right hand was finding the target far too regularly for my liking from Michael Zerafa. Not only that, early on, the left hook of Michael Zerafa was also landing quite regularly. Mainly after Kell Brook finished punching, Michael Zerafa would throw this left hook and it would land quite regularly. Silly shots getting through that Kell Brook shouldn't really be getting caught with. And going forward, that is quite worrying. There's no doubt he won this fight. He clearly won it on points, but as a guy who rates Kell Brook, I expect him to get rid of guys like this in good fashion, and he didn't do so. So, for me, it wasn't a good performance whatsoever, and you have to really consider that Peter Quillin took Michael Zerafa out in 4 or 5 rounds, and I appreciate Peter Quillin is a lot bigger than Kell Brook, but, he's not as skilled, and he got rid of Michael Zerafa. So going forwards, that could be a concern. Is Kell Brook on the slide? Is it because he just wasn't up for this fight? Who knows, but it doesn't really fill me with confidence going forwards. As for Kell Brook's future, where does he go? Now, this fight with Michael Zerafa was somehow a WBA final eliminator at super welterweight. Now, Jarrett Hurd holds that belt. Would you want to see Kell Brook fight Jarrett Hurd on that performance? I've got to be honest, I wouldn't. As a fan of Kell Brook, as a guy who believes in Kell Brook, I don't think he beats Jarrett Hurd on that performance, to be quite frank. In fact, I think Kell Brook gets walked down and he gets beaten down in the late rounds. So going into that fight, I would pick against Kell Brook. So for me, Kell Brook's future at super welterweight is looking quite bleak. Despite what Eddie Hearn has said, despite what Kell Brook's team have said, I cannot see Kell Brook campaigning at super welterweight. Could you guys see Kell Brook beating Jarrett Hurd, Jamel Charlo, or Jaime Munguia? I have a tough time seeing it. I'm not saying it's impossible, but, I would pick against Kell Brook in all of those fights. I've got to be honest. So I believe, despite what his team have said in the past, Kell Brook needs to get on that diet and go back down to welterweight, because I cannot see how Kell Brook succeeds at super welterweight. So I believe Kell Brook needs to go back down to welterweight and essentially see what happens, you know, try and get a big fight down at welterweight. Now, from a UK perspective, you know, the Khan fight is big. It would be pay-per-view. A lot of people want to see it. So that is the main fight Kell Brook will be going for at welterweight. But failing that, you know, fights with Keith Thurman, a rematch with Errol Spence, Danny Garcia. You know, these are all fights for Kell Brook. The Pacquiao versus Broner winner maybe. You know, these are all solid fights. But to me, Kell Brook, he has no business at 154 pounds. So he needs to get back down to welterweight. But ultimately, for me, a disappointing performance from Kell Brook. I really expected Kell Brook to put on a show, and, you know, that didn't happen. You know, for me, over the years, Kell Brook has been such a wasted talent. I've seen this guy live and in person, and, you know, for me, the guy does things that British fighters just don't do. And it is such a shame that his career just hasn't panned out. You know, I've always been a big believer in Kell Brook, but, you know, it's not worked out. And that is due to a lot of reasons. But firstly, you know, the management and matchmaking in Kell Brook's career has been pretty poor. When Kell Brook was with Frank Warren, he took far too long to step up. I believe when Kell Brook was with Frank Warren, he was mandatory for Manny Pacquiao in the WBO. And, you know, he never stepped up when he was with Frank Warren. When he went to Eddie Hearn, you know, again, took him a long time to get the fights. He finally beat Porter, but once he beat Porter, you know, the level of competition was poor. After a few substandard defences of his IBF welterweight title, he then jumps up to middleweight to fight Gennady Golovkin in a fight he should have never have taken. He took a lot of damage in that fight. Then he drops down back to welterweight to fight Errol Spence again. You know, it just didn't work out. You know, for me, the management of his career was poor. And, you know, not only that, you know, Kell Brook has to take a large portion of the blame himself, because outside of a ring, historically, Kell Brook has never really lived the life. Puts on a lot of weight, parties, you know, he does things that he shouldn't really be doing outside the ring, and eventually, you know, that catches up with you. And, you know, for me, Kell Brook will go down as a wasted talent. And at 32 years old, I cannot really see Kell Brook fulfilling his potential. A lot of people in the UK, you know, they blow smoke up fighters' asses. But, you know, for me, Kell Brook was always an elite level talent. And it's sad that he's never really progressed and become a great welterweight. But that's boxing, man. You know, it is what it is. I've always been a big fan of Kell Brook. To be quite honest, I would say Kell Brook is my favourite British fighter right now. Has been for years. But even as a fan, you know, I cannot really stick up for Kell Brook. And, you know, it's not worked out. What can you say? But, yeah, Kell Brook defeats Michael Zerafa by a unanimous decision. You know, he definitely won the fight, but, you know, to me, he didn't really look good doing it. Share your thoughts below. Tell me what you think. Peace.